Good morning. Welcome to Sports Desk Live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with producer Alden Iowani. Our very special guest today, it's an in-studio interview, kind of a rare thing, is the volunteer, he's retired volunteer at the Unser Museum, Bob Brown, also the former sports anchor at Channel 7, and the host of The Locker Room on ESPN Radio 101.7. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. You back in studio? I had to be here for it.
Well, you know what I said? I said we're going to do it by Zoom, but people haven't seen you in a while. I haven't been in studio in a while, and people haven't seen you, and able to see. We want to talk about the Unser Museum, and there's a and people, like I said, I saw you on Channel 13, Channel 7 doing some interviews regarding the Unser Museum.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about, and I wouldn't have come out of retirement except for you, Ed.
No, I appreciate that.
I did.
It's funny because you and I talk periodically, and I still ask you for advice on interviews that I've done, and I got to say this, that in January 2010, this is how far this goes back. Mm-hmm. I know Joe O'Neill because I played basketball against him in high school.
Yeah.
And I remember sending a tape to Joe of a VHS tape. This is how old this is, of a senior show that I did on cable channel. And I remember he says to me, "You can host Bob's show on, you were going to be gone." And I'm like, dang, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it. And so that, I've known you that long. Mm-hmm. And I remember going in studio, saying to myself one day, shoot, I don't know anybody here but Bob and Joe. So when I walked in, I was a little bit nervous, a little bit intimidated. Yeah. I was, because I'd never done radio. But I remember how comfortable you made me feel. Come in here and be part of the show. You taught me a lot, a whole lot, how to prep for a show. You taught me so much that I still use today. And there's times that I send you interviews and you tell me what you think.
Yeah.
So you've always been a very good resource and a good friend.
No, I was happy to do it. I felt like in my career, I always wanted to help those young journalists, broadcasters that were coming along. I always felt like, hey, they're going to be the next generation of broadcasters. So try to help them out the best I could. Not saying you're the next generation. We're close to being the same age and everything, but you were wanting to come on, you wanted to do the show, and we want the show to be as best as possible.
I remember because Mike Loxley was in there at that time, and I remember I was like, man, I want to stay out of the way. I was in production, and I remember you saying, no, come in here, be part of the show. Mm-hmm. So you made me feel really comfortable because I'm going to say the truth. A lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys we said that, egos and this and that, and certainly I've got one too. But I think that at the same time, people have asked me. This young kid reached out to me yesterday, wants to talk to me. My son is in the business now. Yeah. It's funny about my son.
Why'd you do that to him?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's funny because he's a color commentator. He coached at Pius and played at Pius, and a darn good color commentator as far as basketball goes. Broke the game down, and I can't bring him on just because he's my son. He's got to have some credibility, and he did. He did, and now he's on his known for play-by-play.
Yeah.
So we had fun at the state tournament. He's my color guy, then we flip. I'm his color guy. And again, how many fathers and sons
fantastic, man,
get to do that?
Sure, a couple of hours on the radio, having fun, forgetting about all the other things going on in the world.
Well, no, it's funny, though, because he's an attorney, and he caught the bug, and I said, son, you're not quitting your job to do this, so shut up. But you got the bug. You caught it. But the funny thing is, and we're going to get into that, that bug is done. That bug is done because, you were the sports anchor at Channel 7. Yeah. And I used to ask you all the time about how you prep a 101.7 when you were the host of The Locker Room, and you had to sit there and watch sports on the weekend, on the Cowboys, every single game, just so you had something to talk about on Monday.
Well, I just felt like I needed to know everything that was going on in the world of sports. Now, you can't do it. You can't know everything going on. But I felt like I needed to see all the games. I needed to see the plays. I needed to make sure my information was right. Because as I tell young broadcasters, I say, look, if you're going to, it's like taking a test in school. How comfortable do you feel going in there behind the microphone? How comfortable do you feel taking a test if you haven't prepared? So I always wanted to feel comfortable going into the show, and to feel comfortable, you needed to prepare, which meant you need to do a lot of research. You need to watch a lot of games, read a lot of articles, see those things, so you would be prepared, when the time came. So that's why I put the pressure on myself, really, to try to learn everything I could, even right up until showtime, after I'd been prepping in the morning, reading on the internet, watching games, replays of something I recorded that I didn't get a chance to see live. And then you get it all done, and you go in the studio, you show up at the station at 1:30, 2 o'clock or something, and you're still prepping right up until that 4 o'clock, just because you felt like you're just trying to consume as much material as you can. Because here's what I told people about TV and radio and the difference. In TV, it started out with like 5.5 minutes when I first started at Channel 7, 6 minutes worth of sports. That was in 1990. Right. When I left, it was down to about 2:15 that you got for your sportscast. So you would do 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and nobody could respond to what you just told them because it's you and the camera. Radio, you get the guy that calls in about the Phillies or the Astros or whatever it may be. You need to kind of know what's going on with that. So it's a two-way communication in radio. In TV, it's just, here's what I'm telling you, and you're not going to respond back to me unless you call me at the in the station after the show is over.
Lobos, Cowboys, those were always major
big
topics.
Sure.
And you had to be ready to cover those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you did a great job of it. You really did. And now I ask you, and you're like, hey, I'm out of tune, I'm out of touch, and that's by choice. By the way, it's by choice, and that's okay. Because I think on the weekend having to do all the you're married to your wife Kathy, and sometimes. Yeah, I'm sure she wanted to say, let's go out and do something, but you got to say, hey, I got to watch this, I got to do that. So it's good that you've moved on from that, and by your choice. Yeah. Before we get too much in the weeds, we could go on and on forever. The Unser Museum closed, or you did a what you called a dime tour yesterday at 1, and the Unser Museum is moving on to Nebraska.
Yeah.
And you were on Channel 7 and Channel 13 talking about the Unser Museum. Talk a little bit about how you got involved in being, you're not the spokesperson, you made that clear. You don't want to be the spokesperson. You could be, and that's your choice again.
Yeah.
But you volunteered there after you retired. Talk a little bit about, again, I saw some of the pictures.
Yeah.
And man, I thought they were great.
So basically, I became friends with Al Unser, Al Sr., Big Al, roughly 20 years ago when the museum was being built. And so we became friends, and when he passed away, I was working that day at the museum as a volunteer tour guide. I had changed positions with another docent. And so it was almost like it felt like it meant to be that I was there on that Thursday after he passed away on Wednesday night. And I was just filling in for a guy. I usually work Saturdays. So I kind of took it upon myself. And the museum, they knew I had a background in broadcasting and all that, obviously. And so they basically said, hey, why don't you just handle the media and everything. And I wanted to do it to alleviate some of the pressure on Susan Unser, Al's wife. And when they announced that they were going to be moving the museum, the collection, the Unser collection, to Lincoln, Nebraska, Susan asked me if I would be the spokesperson for the museum. So it was like I came out of retirement literally for a week and a half, dealing with the media, talking about the museum. And then I had a chance to visit the museum. You're seeing some of the video here and some of the still pictures. By the way, I took the video and the pictures here you're seeing.
I'm sure.
So that's the entryway to it's the motorsports, it's the Museum of American Speed, okay? Speedway Museum. And it's in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's basically 10 times the size of the Unser Racing Museum. So Susan and Al, and before Al had passed away, they had discussed this, of finding a home for the museum where it would live on, in a big time way and tell the story of IndyCar, and of course the Unser story from the west side, racing out there on the Mesa to Pikes Peak to Indianapolis. And so they had known the Smith family that operates the museum here in Lincoln. And so this was something that they had discussed, and then Al passed away, and so things kind of off rail at that point. But they later came back and started talking with Susan. She determined this was the best plan for the museum, the collection to live on. And so you're seeing some of the spectacular cars here. Just a couple of numbers to show you the difference between the Unser Race Museum and the Museum of American Speed in Lincoln, Nebraska. The Unser Race Museum had about 21,000 visitors a year. This museum, 100,000 visitors a year. The Unser Race Museum, about 20,000 square feet. This thing is close to 250,000 square feet. So you see the different types of cars they've got, all kinds of collections. And not only have they recently expanded the museum, but they've expanded in a way where they can make the centerpiece of the museum the Unser collection. So the Unser collection and the name, the history, it's going to live on for a very long time.
You know, those cars were amazing. Those
Yeah.
cars were amazing. And when I see STP, the sticker STP is the Racer's Edge. You remember that commercial? You know, that they would come up. And I was telling you the other day, I had Rick Wright on Sunday on the radio, and listening to the races on the radio, Henry Tafoya would put it on 1150.
Sure.
And I thought I was more excited, you know, listening on the radio, because you hear all the sounds. You know, and then those announcers were unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, and then when the Unsers are in it, I told you in 1989 when Al Jr. loses my wife and I were right there. And so it's sad to me, because I told you this, it's almost like Hormel chili made in New York City, right? They're going to Nebraska.
I know.
Nebraska. But the things you just talked about, 240,000 square feet, it's just sad to me, because we go back, even Jerry Unser getting killed. You know, in a practice run, we didn't see Jerry; he got killed.
Yep.
Bobby had 3, Al had 4, and Al Jr. had 2. And their name is synonymous with racing here. And it's sad to me. I'm not a huge racing guy, but whenever I was always, who's in the pit, where are they at?
Yeah.
Henry Tafoya covered how many Indianapolises and would tell me how exciting it was in the brickyard, in the pits. He was right there.
I know.
You know, so I never got that chance, but I think. Talk a little bit about what the Unser name meant here in Albuquerque, in New Mexico, as far as racing.
You know, I actually have been down on the starting grid at Indy when Junior was getting strapped in right before the race. I mean, there's nothing like it. You just feel the excitement and everything. And the Unser name, I mean, Unser Boulevard in itself. You know, just the Unser Boulevard, right? Named after the Unsers. But you look at the history of the family, they actually moved. Al's older brothers, Bobby, Louie, and Jerry. Jerry and Louie were twins. They were born 7 years before Big Al. And then Bobby was born a couple of years later, 5 years older than Big Al. And then his father, Jerry, moved the family to Albuquerque to open up a garage on relatively new Route 66. That's how they landed here in Albuquerque. So that's why the museum was here in Albuquerque. Unfortunately, there just wasn't a generational plan that another Unser was going to take over running the operation. And so the city of Albuquerque, as you know, they put forth a $4 million offer to move the museum from its location on Montano over to Central and Unser, an area over there. But that was it. It was $4 million in a bond issue that was coming up this fall. But there was no plan other than, here's $4 million, move the museum. And Susan, you know, none of us are getting any younger. She wasn't quite ready to sign up to say, I'm going to run this Unser Racing Museum, you know, until my final days here. So that was really the issue. There's just a generational plan to make sure the name lived on. And the Smith family, let me just tell you about this family. They are IndyCar lovers. They love racing. They got into the business of manufacturing auto parts and racing parts, okay? And that's where they make their money now. They've got massive warehouses. I don't know if it came up on one of the pictures that we had earlier, but they manufacture the parts and then they distribute them throughout the country. I mean, it's a massive warehouse that looks like an Amazon operation, literally. 5 stories high of product, you know, forklifts running all over the place doing their thing, conveyor belts, moving all of this merchandise. And so that's really where the Smith family made their money. And actually, one of the brothers, they've all worked with them. There were 4 brothers, which is interesting with the Unser 4 brothers. There were 4 Smith brothers. There's 3 of them now. And their father opened up the speed shop where he sold products, okay? And that materialized into this massive warehouse, this distribution, manufacturing facility they have. And their love for racing, they opened the museum in 1992, and they've continued to add on to it ever since. One of the brothers, Carson, a real smart gentleman. All of the brothers are very smart. They've got degrees in engineering and business, and they just run this massive operation. Well, he actually worked with the Unsers. He worked with Robbie and Al Unser Jr., designing parts for their race cars. They actually flew him into Pikes Peak one year because Robbie couldn't figure out the setup of the car. So they flew him into Pikes Peak, and for 2 days he basically worked on the setup of Robbie Unser's Pikes Peak car. And then Robbie went out and came this close to setting
How many Pikes Peak up did he win?
There are. He won 9 of them. Robbie did. Of course, Bobby won 13 times at Pikes Peak. Yeah.
We got to take a break, Bob, but we'll be back to the sports desk after these messages.
pitch. There's a line drive right at the shortstop for out number 3.
Apodaca ripped to left field. That will bounce in, so it's going to be extra bases as they'll have to chase that one at the wall in the warning track. Flipped up, there's no play at home. So it's an RBI double for Andrew Apodaca. Runner at third. High leverage spot. Can Chavez keep the tie? No, that's going to be cracked into left field. It's a base hit as Love puts the Sandia Matadors ahead for the first time today.
The 0-2. It's upstairs, goes to the backstop, and the run will not score. Gun down at home.
Chavez rocks and fires. Ahmed, that's going to be an RBI for Ahmed as that one right through the gap in right center. Petrie will scoop that one, and it's looking like a triple as Ahmed plugs into third base, and what a way to score that run for the Matadors.
Coach Romero barking out his orders there to his players. He's been around the game for a long time. Nice shot to center field. That'll bring runners in. Just like that, La Cueva will bring 3 runners in to go up 3-0. Runner advances to third. Shot to center. That looks good. That's gone. Man, outstanding center shot there. Is La Cueva will score. Antonio Lucero, second baseman, quite the hitter. Shot to third, and good catch, and she gets the out. Outstanding play by Trinity Bazan. Nice bright spot.
Costly errors allowed Cleveland to get 1 run back. That one hit on the ground to the left side. Throw to first in time. Throw home. Got her. Whoa, what a play.
Next door or something. Not sure, but they came out here, and Ellison cracks an RBI out to left field. That's where you got to do it. 1 run, 2 run, and this game could very well be over. It's a play at the plate. It's sliding, and that will do it. The Rams walk off the La Cueva Bears. It's a 3-run batted in shot by Dean Ellison.
We would like to thank the following sponsors for making this broadcast possible.
On any given night in America, there's almost 35,000 homeless veterans out there, and they're struggling. Oftentimes, food is something that gets sacrificed. It's easy to ignore it or lose track of that, but it's a desperate need in this community, and that's why we offer this food pantry to help those veterans. I had the privilege of running into a veteran. I said, I know it's just a drop in the bucket, and he said, I would not be alive today if it wasn't for this place. You obviously have a choice of card every time you make a purchase, but if you use this metal card, you'll be helping a veteran in need.
After the holidays, it's challenging to see bills come in. P&M can help with tips to save money on your electric bill. Set your thermostat lower. For every degree lower, you'll save 1 to 2% and see results in your next bill. Add weather stripping and caulking around windows and doors. Reducing air leaks saves you money. Hot air rises. Switch your ceiling fan to clockwise so warm air circulates, helping your home feel warmer. Small changes save you money on your bill. Learn more at pnm.com/tips.
P&M are proud supporters of ProView Sports.
Welcome back to the Sports Desk, live on Comcast Channel 26, also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with producer Arlene Wani, our very special guest today, Bob Brown, the retired volunteer overseer of the Unser Museum, and we talked about a little bit about great pictures that you had of the Unser Museum. And I'm a sports guy, you know that.
Yep.
You watch Formula now. You watch Formula. You watch a lot of. I wasn't big into Indy only because of the Unser. So I remember who's on the pit. I'd always be reading Gordon Johncock, Mark Donahue, Tom Sneva, AJ Foyt. I'm only reading these because I'm like, okay, who do the Unsers have to go? Who's their competition? You know, in Mario Andretti. There was just a lot of great names back in the Indianapolis history. It's an exciting race. You know, you mentioned being right there when the start is. You know, Henry T would mention to me all the time about the excitement of being there. And you talked about that. Now you mentioned the wall. We have to ask this question. In '89, Junior gets spun by Fittipaldi, Emerson Fittipaldi, down the stretch.
Sure.
Looks like he's going to win.
Yep.
And he's got spun at the end, and we laughed about it on break because it looked like Junior was going to maybe say something to Fittipaldi. Instead, he gives him the thumbs up.
Yeah, everybody thought he was going to come out to the track and give him the old "you're number one," right? But instead, he gave him the 2 thumbs up.
We may have been doing the salute. I wasn't. I was like, gosh, it was so close. But talk about that wall and where that wall is now.
Well, it's interesting because that wall, the concrete barrier, and the catch fence, and actually one of the green yellow lights that's up on the track, those sat out in front of the Unser Race Museum forever. And about a year and a half ago, I showed up at the museum and it was gone. I was like, oh, what happened to the catch fence out here? That had a history to it, right? And somebody told me, oh, Al Jr., he either sold it or gave it away to this museum in Nebraska. And I was like, Nebraska, just like you did, and a lot of people did when they were in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Well, Nebraska, and come to find out, I asked the Smith brothers because I was at the Museum of American Speed a week and a half ago, went over there to check it out, and I said, I heard Junior had the catch fence and he gave it to the museum. You guys have it? And they go, yeah, we have it. It's in storage, and we're going to get it out. We'll put it up with the Unser collection as they expand their Museum of American Speed and make the Unser the centerpiece of the museum. So, that thing will be seen again by a lot of people, a lot more people that would have seen it here, unfortunately, but it's going to live on. And that was a great story. And, I think Al Jr. did the right thing. He probably wanted to do something else, but all said and done, he comes back, a couple of years later, he wins his first, and then 2 years later, he wins his second Indy 500. So I think he's okay with it.
Yeah, and heck, they would have had 10 Unser, 10 wins.
There are so many guys over the years that have said, if only I could have won Indy once or twice or 3 times. Look at Big Al. He's a 4-time winner of the Indy 500, but a lot of people don't know that in 1992, in the closest finish in the history of the race, when Junior beat Scott Goodyear to win his first Indy 500 by 43 one-thousandths of a second, nobody remembers that 20 seconds behind those guys was Big Al, who finished 3rd that day. Had Junior and Scott Goodyear gotten into it and crashed each other out, Al potentially would have won his 5th Indy 500. That's what I'm saying, that there's a lot of things that have to happen and a lot of luck has to go your way.
I remember, I thought they accused Senior of blocking for Junior that day, blocking a driver. I don't know.
A lot of that goes on, trust me. Behind the scenes, these guys are conniving, figuring out ways how they can get ahead of the other guy, how they can maybe a teammate can help them or something, or how a dad and son can maybe help each other. You don't think Mario and Michael Andretti were ever in cahoots when it came to racing on the track?
Another great name, the Andrettis. It was such an exciting. It's still Sergio Castanevic.
Helio Castroneves.
Right, he's Castanevis.
He's a 4-time winner.
Yeah. Parlay that into Dancing on the Stars.
We don't want him to win another one because we don't want him to surpass Big Al with his 4 wins, right? And the other guys with 4 wins. I don't care about those guys, but Al with his 4 wins. Another thing about racing that I think has changed a lot, and maybe why you loved it so much listening to it on the radio, because that was a different way to listen to to watch, to take in the Indy 500, is back then it was very, very dangerous, okay? I'm not saying it's not dangerous now, but the softer barriers, the halos over the drivers, all of those things factor in that I believe drivers will take more chances now than they did back in the day because they have a lot more safety devices built into the track and the race cars. Now, that good thing, bad thing, You just have to look at it different ways. Yeah, for safety reasons, it's good, but some of these drivers may be doing things they wouldn't normally do if there was just a concrete barrier and no softer walls.
There were some spectacular crashes.
There were. I mean, you
tires
mentioned
going in the stands and killing a couple of people one time.
It happened. I mean, you just the speed you're talking about, the size of the track. You mentioned Jerry Jr. That was Big Al and Bobby's older brother. He was a twin with Louie, their brother. And Jerry Jr., a lot of people don't know, he was the first Unser to race in the Indy 500. It lasted all of one lap. There was a 15-car pileup on the first lap, and his car flew over the edge of the track. He basically walked away with a bum shoulder, but he had raced in the Indy 500, the first Unser, to make the big race. A year later, you mentioned this, 1959, he goes back to the Speedway, and he crashes in practice, and he spends 2.5 weeks in the hospital and dies of his injuries. After his crash in '59, they mandated flame retardant driving suits for all the drivers, which before guys were showing up in jeans and a t-shirt. In fact, that 15-car pileup in '58, a driver by the name of Pat O'Connor was killed in that crash when his car went up in the air and came down upside down on top of himself, and he basically died instantly. After that crash in '58, they mandated roll bars for the cars. You look at a simple roll bar in '58 after the race, and now you look at the construction of the car. I mean, these guys, they were tough back then because the chances of you getting hurt or even killed, very high.
Way different now.
Definitely.
Yeah, way different. Safety has come to the forefront, and things improve as time goes on, and that's good because you mentioned some of those races, man.
Sure.
And a pit stop could cost you a lead, could cost you, depending on when you pit it. Those guys in the pits used to amaze me, man. They really did.
Yeah.
Let's get to this real quick, Bob. We got 2 minutes
Okay.
left. And
All right.
what has Bob Brown been doing since he retired from 101.7? You mentioned this. You really don't pay attention to a lot of sports. You
I
do
don't.
watch Formula. You watch some soccer. But tell us what Bob Brown's been doing.
Man, I'm traveling a little bit, obviously, and I can't even realize this, Ed, that it's been 4+ years since I retired. And now I tune in and watch these games. Sometimes I'll tune in and they'll say, "Oh, Coach so-and-so." And I'm like, I never heard of this guy before. And he's coaching Major League team or NBA team. I don't follow it the way I did before because I don't have to. Now a little more enjoyable because I'm not taking notes. I'm not rewinding the tape to make sure I got the right call down here or I've written down the right thing. So it's just a lot more enjoyable. What I watch Premier League, English Premier League soccer, Formula One, IndyCar, a little NASCAR I'll watch the golf tournaments on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. But in terms of sitting down and watching a baseball game or an NBA basketball game, even a Lobo football game or basketball game, I really don't watch a lot of that anymore. And I wasn't sure if I would or not after I retired, but I watch just enough that I enjoy it, but I don't really miss it a whole lot. I miss the guys and the banter back and forth with all the guys that I knew in sports and different TV stations, radio, and all of that. But in terms of the day-to-day grind, not missing that too much.
That's we talked about that because on the weekend you're watching every game, and not only did you prep, but you went in the studio and got the correct sound bites. You used a lot of sound bites, so you had to go with the producer, whoever the producer was. Robbie used to be Robbie once in a while, or whoever the producer was.
Yeah,
I
Ray Montagna.
Ray Montagna was great. I actually was able to host the locker room 4 times, and I had a great time with it every time that I was able to do it. I caught the bug, and I'm not at that point because I do sports for 99.9, so I have to every day, make sure I'm on top of the news. Mike Adams would do that when I co-hosted the Mike on the Mic.
Mm-hmm.
All he would say is on Friday night, be ready. Just be ready. So I mean, he didn't say specifically what to be ready for. So I'd have to read soccer, everything. But it's good that you've found a niche in retirement. You did a great job at Channel 7 and at 101.7.
Appreciate it.
You taught me a lot about the business, and like I said, I still bounce stuff off of you. I'll send you an interview, and you'll say, hey, make sure you do this and this. And you've always, like I said, been a good resource and a good friend.
No, I thank you very much, and I appreciate you having me on. Maybe in another 5 years we can do it again, right?
Yeah, you know what? You never know what's going to happen in 5 years. It'll cause us, and again, all great information about the about the Unser Museum. I'm sorry it's leaving. Honest to God, I'm sorry.
Too. I mean, it's a cool place to go down there and be able to go in and see all those great cars and everything. But when I went to Lincoln and I saw what they had and their passion and love and knowing the Unsers, knowing their story, I think it really was the right decision for Susan Unser to move the museum to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Going to a good place.
Yep.
Bob Brown, Thank you so much for being our guest. We sure appreciate
that.
it.
Thank you.
For producer Auden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.